ain't see me, you Stevie. Wondering how I reach more evolutions than Eevee and make it look easy.
What is up, Earth's mightiest subscribers? It's your boy Ernie the Blerd without fear. Welcome back to the channel. Before we get into today's video, make sure you hit that subscribe button and tap that notification bell. That way you don't miss out on any of my videos. And also, make sure you hit that like button too, because not only does it help me out in the algorithm, but it also ensures you see more videos just like this one. All right, so today we're gonna be talking about Storm number 2. And this one, it has some very ominous undertones for Storm. As a matter of fact, as we talked about in the previous video for Storm number 1, it was made very clear that Storm is very likely going to die at some point. And honestly, with the way that the Krakoan era went and how so many mutants were dying left and right and being resurrected, as it turns out, the bill has come due, because Storm, while she never died during the Krakoan era, she actually survived the entirety of it without the need of a single resurrection. It does just so happen now that, she's gotten past all that, and mutant resurrection is off the table now. It is now her turn to face down death, something that Storm is actually pretty accustomed to. She literally faced the personification of death in terms of the mutant death, the son of Apocalypse. She actually survived him not once, but twice. But here she's facing off with a very different kind of death. We saw in the previous issue that she had suffered a very, very severe case of radiation poisoning when she went into that factory to try and save the people in Oklahoma. And while we know that the cosmic entity Eternity is watching Storm from on high, preparing for the moment that she will become his eternal Storm, she's very likely gonna have to die first before that happens, or at the very least, come very close to doing so. And we see in this issue where she's trying to save lives and she is succumbing to the bloody coughs, the bloody noses that come along with radiation poisoning. She has to try and figure out a way to fix her problem. But at a point when she goes to the Night and Day Clinic, which is the new hospital for the extra mundane that has been introduced and is basically a bigger, better version of the Night Nurse's original clinic, it is here where we discover there's like a whole secret operation, an actual full-on hospital, not the same clinic that was hidden in Chinatown in its earliest inception, but a place that is actually hidden behind a magic illusion of a junkyard, but is actually a full-service hospital to superheroes and their like. But this superhero hospital comes with a caveat. They serve everyone. However, they do not serve X-Men. Now, this is interesting because this is a hospital that is technically co-run by a mutant, and as he says, he serves mutants just fine. 80% of his customer base are mutants, but he doesn't serve X-Men, specifically because they didn't do right by mutant kind during the Krakoan era. Now, this is a mutant who has the power of medical diagnosis. He's able to just look at Storm and tell her exactly what's wrong with her, like what is happening, and it is in fact radiation syndrome. She is quite literally dying, and it's because she has a very advanced form of it. Now, one could say that his beef with the X-Men seems a bit misjudged, but in honesty, it's not really that far off the beaten path. I mean, you gotta think about it. This is a guy who's a doctor. He took the Hippocratic Oath, do no harm, and he wants to do the most he can do for a community of people who generally don't get good health insurance. I mean, you gotta think about stuff like this. Superheroes probably face some of the most dangerous things in the entire universe and usually have to hide behind a secret identity, and not all of them are wealthy playboy billionaire philanthropists or are best friends with wealthy playboy billionaire philanthropists. So they're not always going to have somebody to foot their bills all the time, especially big bills that could be the result of getting your ass kicked on a super heroic level. This is a guy who doesn't hate mutants. He's not a self-hating mutant even. Most of his patients are mutants, and he doesn't even charge them. He treats them for free. What it seems he actually took umbrage with is the fact that there was a whole world of people out there who could use the X-Men's help. The special drugs that were created during the Krakoan era that were basically being sold off, and in a lot of cases were even stolen and then sold off on the black market, and even some that were tainted. And there was also the resurrection protocols, which were only available to mutants and some select humans, but it was very possible they could have just as easily provided all of these things to everyone. And that's kind of, I think, where his sticking point is with this. And I think some people will probably not catch the nuance in why he feels the way he feels, but you got to look at it. The thing he even points out is that every other superhero pretty much put in on this effort. He says that literally everyone down from Doctor Strange to Wakanda to Iron Man to Iron Fist to Moon Knight, the Fantastic Four, Blue Marvel and Captain Marvel, so many different people threw in on this whole endeavor and put money, actual money behind it, because they believed in what it was he had to do, and therefore he's allowed to do whatever he needs to do for free. The X-Men had this opportunity. The Krakoa didn't necessarily need money. I mean, money was helpful because it helped them deal with other people, but for the most part, Krakoa was largely self-sustained. Not only that, Charles Xavier had his own companies and businesses, so too did a lot of other characters. Characters like Emma Frost had the Hellfire Trading Company. There were all sorts of ways for Krakoa to make money, and the medicines, honestly, they didn't really need to make money off of any of it. I mean, granted, a lot of it was conditional on the grounds of recognizing Krakoan's sovereign, status, but beyond that, there really should have been no extra cost for that, and a lot of the things that the X-Men could have done, they could have made available to everyone. And while one could make a case that, oh, well, they were just holding that stuff for themselves until they could get their people in order, well, yeah, you could make that case. But I think it's safe to say that was never going to happen. That was never an actual reality. And it's not even because Orcus came knocking on the door. It's the fact that Krakoa was corrupted from the inside. So yeah, it was never going to happen. And right now, Storm is paying the price for it and having to give up her trademark Ruby, something that has been with the character for a very, very long time. That very same Ruby has been a fixture on Storm's costume off and on since her debut in Giant Size X-Men #1 in 1975. It is something that is very important to her because it is a ruby that belonged to her deceased mother, a woman that she didn't get to spend a whole heap of a lot of time around, considering that her parents died when she was very young. Storm's mother, Indari, has been dead since Storm was 6 years old, so you would imagine something like this is incredibly important to her, and the fact that she's giving it up now because she recognizes that her life is literally hanging in the balance, it's very obvious that this is something that hurts her on a deep level, but she's willing to do this if it means she'll actually be able to get somebody to give her some help. Now, on the other hand, I don't like the fact that Dr. Day actually takes her ruby as payment, not even so much just as payment, but just in the sense that, Storm has given up something so that the X-Men specifically can be treated, because as I already said, mutants are already being treated, it's just not X-Men who are being treated specifically. Any mutant who has served as an X-Man is not accepted. So the fact that Storm is giving this up for not just herself, but for the future of the X-Men, I will say that's the part that I think to me was just kind of like a little bit harsh, but I get why he did it. Everyone else put in on this, so why shouldn't the X-Men themselves put in on this? And Dr. Day is being fair in that, and something I've often said, that, mutants are treated as a monolith when they are in fact not a monolith. It is both fair and unfair at the same time. The X-Men have to pay a price, and even more so that Storm has to pay it. But that's a conversation for another day, because at the end of it all, well, yes, Dr. Day is able to tell Storm what's wrong with her. At the same time, he cannot help her. He has to refer her to somebody else, and that is the Gunner of Gods himself, the Ungen Supreme, Dr. Voodoo. This, to me, was really cool because, I have always enjoyed the character of Dr. Voodoo. I always thought he was such an interesting guy and someone who does not get used very often. And while granted, he has been used more frequently over on the Strange Academy side of things, since he was no longer the Sorcerer Supreme of Earth, I do appreciate that, he had something to do, that he was actually able to work as the headmaster of the Strange Academy and get some more face time with, readers. And since Strange Academy trends with younger readers, I also thought that was a great thing, too, because I feel like he's this character that he just gets forgotten about. A lot of people forget. A lot of people don't even remember that he was the Sorcerer Supreme, even though that wasn't but maybe over 10 years ago. So I do like the fact that he's being brought up here, and it's appropriate that he is brought here because Storm is not a usual character. She is a very unusual character in the sense that she's not only a mutant, she's not only a goddess, but she also is of a magic lineage, and I appreciate that it, at least on the surface, it seems like Morewa is actually about to address the very thing about Storm that I've been talking about for a while now, that a lot of other people haven't, and it's the fact that she is, in fact, magic royalty. It's actually stated here that her bloodline hails from Agamotto himself, and this is because Aisha, the second ever Sorcerer Supreme, that's one of her oldest ancestors. She shares blood with Agamotto, makes for a very interesting term because, to my understanding, it was never really stated whether Aisha and Agamotto had some sort of relationship, because there is an actual Agamotto, for those that don't know. If you go back and look at the Avengers of 10 million BC, that's where we see Agamotto himself. It seems like maybe at some point that bloodline crossed over with Agamotto's on some level, whether it was because of some kind of romantic inclination or because of just the simple fact that Aisha was Sorcerer Supreme and possessed the Eye of Agamotto that comes with that station, and then maybe that had some influence over it that way. It's difficult to say at this point because it's not really expounded upon here. It's all coming up at the very end of the issue for the most part, but also the point that he brings up Ashake, who is yet another ancestor of Storm's, who also had magic capability far greater than what Storm currently possesses. Now, it seems like Dr. Voodoo might be able to help her out, and I think he will, but I think he's not just going to help fix her of her medical malady, but he is also going to probably put her on game about what Eternity has in store for her. How it plays out is another story altogether. We do know, just based on the solicit alone, that the very next issue, she is going to get some kind of information from Dr. Voodoo. I'm hoping that it's more about her magic heritage, and maybe Dr. Voodoo can put her on game about some stuff, because that's something I feel like is been largely missing from Storm. It's always been hinted at and teased at and danced around, but never really fully addressed on any major level, and I feel like Morewa has a very unique opportunity here to dig into that. Whether or not that's the case, another story, but I really am hoping for it. I like this setup here just because, well, for one, we're getting, obviously, Storm solo series. That's always going to be, to me, a good thing. But also the fact that, Morewa is sneaking in little things here and there. I don't know if this was his call specifically, or if this was Lucas just going into jazz mode, but also the inclusion of Blue Marvel, just a little, hey, here he is right here, just in the picture, because we just don't see Blue Marvel very often. So I thought that was a really cool touch. The fact that Dr. Voodoo is here, the fact that, some aspects of discrimination and how people see each other and view each other are touched on in some very interesting ways, I think. So it's like I said, it's all good. It is all good. But yes, Storm potentially learning more about her magic roots, I'm here for it.